Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Live Beyond Average podcast. I am Jordan Miller, your host, and I am here with my friend, and you've been on the show 3 times now.
Is it 3?
Yeah, Greg is here with me today, and he just got back from a hunt.
Yeah.
And we're going to chat about it a little bit. It's exciting. It was his first solo, legit solo hunt where you camped out.
Yep.
So it's kind of fun. I was texting him the other day, and he had the whole week off. So I was like, dude, let's come in. Let's podcast it up a little bit. You still have more hunts coming up.
Yeah.
But so you have a busy year. But I'm excited. It's been an awesome year so far. A lot of buddies out hunting this year. I feel like I've had more friends out on hunts or more adventurous hunts. It's just been fun to watch all the guys go out and have success, to go out and test themselves, to test the manliness, what I like to call it, do manly things out in the wilderness.
Eat dirt.
Eat dirt. And just connect, man. Reconnect. The importance that we just talked about, previous to this too, is that higher connection of family when you're away.
Yeah.
So, Greg, you were out. Let's start talking about your experience, man. You went out. You sold a backpack. Take us from the beginning.
Right.
Well, let's start just BSing.
Yeah, so I had an all public land tag up in northwest South Dakota, and I kind of this is the first year that I've had a rifle tag, and I think we've talked about it before that I'm relatively new to hunting.
Yeah.
I've done some bird hunting mostly, but as far as big game, I'm very green. So I kind of wanted to have a bit of an adventure, have a good experience. So I burnt six years of points this year. I guess I didn't forcefully do it because the state decided I could do it. But
right. That's a good point.
But used up my points and got this tag and kind of made a plan to do kind of a hybrid backpack truck camp sort of situation. So from the standpoint of how I approached it, I basically thought, well, rather than having to get up so early every morning, I'd take all my camping gear and camp kind of where I find deer, essentially, So I did that. So as I came in Sunday, got all my stuff ready, loaded up the backpack, headed in, found actually some does and a small buck right away. So I said, this is a good spot. The backpack's heavy, so this is far enough. It's a good spot. It was a great point because I had open creek bottom to the east, open creek bottom to the west.
Okay.
Kind of draws to the north and south, so it was like a perfect spot to kind of be on a knob and just hang out for the rest of the night.
Nice.
So, set up basically climbed up on the ridge and hung out for a while. This was pretty in the afternoon. I'd left just not super early in the morning, so this is right away, right in kind of that starting prime time.
Okay.
Sat down, started glassing. Had those other deer that were kind of milling around off to my kind of to my left, if you will, if you're thinking of I'm looking out over the whole area, and just kind of hung out. And basically, it got to be about 3. I'm like, it's still light. Not much going on right now. Maybe I'll go kind of find a flat spot,
right,
for my tent. While I still got some light. That way, if it's dark, I know where I gotta go. It's not as big of a deal of kind of joccking it, avoiding cacti and all that stuff.
Yeah, we have a lot of cacti around.
So as I'm setting up my tent, I looked down the draw where I could see to the kind of the north, and there's this really nice. It looked to be maybe a 4x4, maybe a 3x3 mule deer.
Okay.
Just came wandering out towards this doe and this small buck that I'd seen earlier that were feeding in the sage.
Right.
It's one of those moments where you see it and you just freeze and you're like, uh-oh.
Right.
So I kind of set down my backpack, picked up my gun, and grabbed a headlamp and headed back out to where I had been glassing. I had my binoculars on, so I figured that's good enough. Head out there, and I don't know if the wind changed or the movement just got him suspicious, but he just stood dead still in the middle of the sage and didn't move. And so I got to where I had been previously, sat there, and I'm like, I don't know if I can get a shot on this guy. This is a pretty tricky shot, which going back to my, kind of greenness, I'm only so comfortable with my rifle. So
sure. So you're specific on yardages that you want to reach out to.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I basically kind of waited out, see if he's gonna move, but he just stood there and stared, and all of a sudden he bounced off. Turned around, bounced off. It's like, all right, well, at least I know he's here. I know those other deer are here. Maybe they'll draw him in later. Good enough for today. I'll finish out the day looking around, and went back to camp and got set up as soon as it was kind of really getting dark, and just shooting light was pretty much done for. So got all set up, had a little meal, and hit the hay at a bright hour of 6 o'clock in the evening.
Right when it was already pitch dark.
Yeah. So spent the night there. Got up the next morning. Went back out on the knob. Sure enough, saw those deer come back to where they had bedded. Didn't see the larger deer. Thought, well, I'll maybe head back to my truck and kind of rethink my game plan. I can check out a few more areas. Packed up everything, headed back down towards the road, and started walking up. Luckily, with my heavy backpack, a guy on a 4-wheeler gave me a ride back to my truck.
Oh, really? Yeah. Just cruising one of those accessible roads?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so I got back to my truck, drove in a little bit further to an intersection, parked, and then started hiking some more. Hit some more areas close to where I had camped, just to kind of check them out. Didn't really see much. Basically kind of got the idea that, like, all right, I'm going to go back to this knob at night and sit there again, see if this deer comes out.
Yeah.
And then go from there. Well, finish out the day kind of milling around, looking around. That country is tough because there's so many draws, and it's different than just like the open stuff where there's so many nooks and crannies. You can sit there and look, but you almost have to move every so often,
Yep.
So I finally got back to where I was, the same group of deer right down the hill from me, literally, I think maybe 80 yards.
Okay.
Just sitting there hanging out, watching. I don't see the larger deer. Nightfall, or it gets dark, those deer move on. I was like, well, you know what, I think I'm going to sleep in the truck tonight. I can stretch out a little bit better. So I headed back up to my truck, got a game plan for the next day, went back out, same area. Didn't see the deer again, or that group of deer.
So you're on day 3 technically now, right?
Yeah, 2.5-ish.
Yep, 2.5, 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
The wind was different, so I was on a different knob.
Okay.
And so didn't see anybody or any of those deer, except for one doe way off in the distance, kind of around the corner of the area that I'd been camping in.
Okay.
And so I was kind of like, well, I'm not sure what to do, so maybe I'll go back up on that ridge, head down a ways, and loop around, go back to my truck, and then there's some other areas that I can kind of hit that were on the south side of this whole kind of ridge line area. So head back to basically my camp spot, sit there, have a little breakfast, quick a minute, and watch, and start heading towards the road, which is a little bit different way than I came in, knowing that there was a few kind of draws where that doe had went.
Okay.
Got to the first draw, nothing there. Got to the second draw, and I was I was in a dip, so I had a decision: either go to the road or go check the draw. I'm like, I'm here, go check the draw, and sure enough, there they were again.
Nice.
Like, all right. So I was like, you know what, this is it. And I think what's important about this is leading up to this, I kind of going in to kind of switch gears. Going into this, I had this idea that I'd just kind of roll in. And this area has some really great deer.
Yes.
And I had this idea that I'd kind of roll in, clean up, roll out,
Shoot a pig, and just get out of there.
so
isn't that funny though? Like what we dream up in our heads to happen, and then and for some reason I do it too, and I did it on my biggest hunt this year in Nevada, where I was like, I'm gonna go down there. I'm gonna hike in 6-7 miles up camp, and I'm gonna slay a monster elk in there, and then I'm gonna spend 4 days packing it out.
You just have this vision of you shirtless carrying.
Dude, it's funny though, isn't it? We do, and I think it's good in the sense of we are dreaming for best case scenarios. We want we want those things to happen, but it's also fun when you go through multiple days of all right, this isn't really happening as I thought.
There's a fawn. That's nice.
That's nice. Another doe. But it's good because like you're persevering
Yeah.
through those days.
Yeah.
You know.
And kind of on that topic, like we had mentioned a little bit earlier, that solo thing, man, it is mental gymnastics.
Yes.
To just not say, yeah, I gave it a shot,
Yeah.
It's time, I'll just head out,
And you can make up a million excuses, and you can feel them in your head because like your mind will come up with so many excuses to do this or take the easy shortcut or go home or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because it's different than when you're by yourself.
Oh yeah,
It's a different game.
And just sit, it gets dark at 6 o'clock, and there you sit, and you're not tired, even though you were up fairly early, but still it's 6 o'clock, so you're not tired, and you sit there and you just think and think, and that was probably actually the best thing that could happen to me, because it occurred to me, and I was like, all right, let's get realistic about this.
Mm-hmm.
This is my kind of first by myself backpack solo sort of hunt. Let's get realistic about what is success,
Yes. Yeah, and finding what success is to you, not the internet.
Exactly.
Not Instagram.
Yes.
And that's the biggest point I think that we're covering today.
Oh.
And we didn't even pre-plan this, but I think we both understand it because we've both been through it on where this was going to go.
Yeah.
And what success is to you, the individual.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the internet thing is so spot on, because even sitting at home cleaning up after I got back from the hunt, take little breaks, see what friends are doing.
Yeah.
Going through, and it's just big deer, big deer, big deer, big deer.
Yep.
And it's like, what is going like? And it's kind of that same thing. It gets in your head like that's what success is. And like honestly, it occurred to me as I'm laying there, like, okay, first of all, having even field dressed a deer by myself, I'm very green at.
Yeah.
To think about doing it in the dark, which I'll get to that later, but
okay, yeah, that's
but
awesome.
doing it in the dark would have just been a nightmare. And knowing now what I went through,
that stressed you out thinking about that.
I'm like, that's dumb. Why would I do that? Why would I force myself into that if I have an opportunity?
Yeah.
And then the other thing was, okay, then also just packing it out and just being unfamiliar with getting things, in your backpack centered right and
not having
the weight.
And not having a helping hand.
Yes.
That's the other key to remember, guys. Like, I've had my brother along on a lot of hunts.
Yeah.
Having that helping hand is huge. So when I did my solo hunt, it changed every aspect on how you go about things.
Yeah.
Every aspect.
And then also just completing it, being successful overall was something that came to me. I'm like, you know what? Last year I went up to the same area with my bow, and it was great. It was a great experience. I love that area, and I will go back.
Mm-hmm.
But I walked away from that unsuccessful, so to speak, and it was kind of a bummer. And you're like, what did I do wrong? So just getting that under your belt, so to speak. My wife said the same thing. She's like, you just gotta get the first one out of the way, and she's like, you can go back up there again.
Yeah, because your confidence is gonna build every time.
So those three things of field dressing, packing, and then just overall success. It occurred to me. I was like, you know what? That's what success is gonna look like for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. You put aside all the other noise and whatever you see, and figure out what's success for you. And I'm not a big showy guy, so to speak, but I was pretty darn proud, and like on my Instagram I had those pictures of the shadows of me, and it's like, what, that's perfect, because it's kind of beginning and end, and it shows that it's success overall. It has nothing to do with size, it has nothing to do with
score.
It was really good to go through that, so.
Yeah, and we were texting, the other day too, and we talked about that, like, dude, like, did you test yourself? Did you accomplish this on your own? Was it difficult? And you were like, yes. And then I was like, and then you were like, you nailed it. You were literally like, yeah, I'm very proud of myself. Yeah. And that to me is like, dude, you had an awesome experience, and you had an awesome hunt, and that's what it's about. Growth.
Yeah.
And you went out there and you challenged yourself, you did new things, and you did it alone. That stimulates growth. We're stimulated. It's just like lifting weights. When we go through challenge and when we bust our muscles down and when we're breathing hard when we're tired, but we continue, that stimulates growth in the muscle. right? It stimulates, the muscle has to repair and grow. It's the same way with these situations in life. You're not ever going to stimulate growth if you're always comfortable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Success is just such a relative term when it boils down to it. You know, it's really what matters for you. So I'm super proud that I went through it and struggled through it. And like the funny thing is, my wife is 100% right that I got that under my belt, and I was laying in bed last night actually. I'm like, oh man, you know, I could have stayed out there.
Yeah, I kind of want to be back.
Your whole mindset changes.
Dude,
I could be out there still. Like even if I had the deer in the cooler, like just checking out mule deer, like it's freaking cool.
I could have scouted, or like there's plenty of other areas that you could have even just like had your bow.
Yeah,
like you know what I mean? Like we can always come up with more. But it's also like we talked about, like that family. Like if we both have kids, and the more you're gone to, and like now we have technology to be able to text or FaceTime or sat phone, whatever it is, where you can still kind of connect when you're out. And it's very good for us men to be away, and because it causes this reconnection with our family, but it also makes it difficult to be gone at times because we want to be back with them, you know. And so it's finding that balance that we've talked about so much on the show, with our kids and with our wives and everything.
That kind of that draw to you want to be helpful, and you don't want to be just like they're fine, you know.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So yeah, it's tough to sometimes. There's a whole nother layer in there. I think it's, you know, I think a lot of people went through that. You know, years ago you always hear how, like, you know, oh, mom take care of the kids and all that. I think people went through that. It's just they maybe didn't express it enough, and now we're kind of at the point where, actually, in my opinion, we're manly enough to admit that. It changes your mindset. You know.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, I think part of being manly is I want to be present with my kids. You know what I mean? That's a part of being manly, because I want to make sure they're raised the way they need to be raised, right? But I also know, like, doing these trips where they're seeing, like, because they're going to be with me at some point on these trips, but the ones that I'm away and I'm accomplishing things and I'm coming back and they're seeing the photos or they're hearing the stories, like, I think that is also a way for them to look up to what being a man is, or look up to what challenging yourself is, and that also for them helps stimulate growth.
Just that kind of example that they see.
Yes.
For you to go out and do something and be successful in one way or the other is really important for them.
Yeah, and so and for us to be able to teach them that, we have to experience that.
Yeah.
That's I think part that some guys and people are missing in their life is the experience of the challenge, or the experience of life to be able to teach.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because I think for me, something that has always been present that I don't know, maybe it's not fair to say that everybody doesn't feel this way, but having come into this later in life, the experience and the adventure has been a bigger draw than necessarily, you know, an animal like this or something. You know, absolutely, I would love to have something like this, but like kind of that draw is the experience and the adventure of it. You know, so
and being okay to like come home with that tag not notched. Yeah, you know what I mean. Which is why, in a sense, why I do have some nice animals, because I've chosen. Okay, I want to shoot a nice animal, or I don't want to notch the tag. And that's not every hunt. Some hunts I'm like, I really just want to go out and get something, and I want the meat and I want the experience. Like, I sacrificed a nice buck tag, antelope tag this year because I want to take my daughter out. Yeah. And I was like, first doe I see, we're gonna go pluck that thing. And that's what we did. I mean, we went out, we found a doe, we hiked a mile, we snuck up to under 100 yards together, and she was 5. You know, and like we put it down, she cut it up with me, and we packed it out, and she walked out a mile. Like that, I was totally willing to sacrifice shooting a nice buck for the experience with her over putting something on my wall. Yeah. You know, and I think that's very important too.
Yeah. And trophies relative too. You know, we've talked about podcasting about like wild game stuff that we love to do. I absolutely love the after, you know, making sausage and jerky, and that's honestly somewhat, I love that more than anything else about it, to be honest. The animal.
And we've gotten into that this year a little more. In growing up, we always processed our own deer, in the sense of steaks. We would cut up we cut up our own steaks and stuff, but burger wise, we would always we'd throw all the excess in a pile. We take it somewhere and have burger made into whatever. Well, now this year we've gotten into processing it completely.
Yeah.
And so now we grind our own burger.
Yep.
We started making our own jerky, and it's added it's added this whole other element of like pride to the whole process, and also like the connection with me and my wife in those evenings where we might have just been sitting on the couch on our phones or watching a show. Like, we a couple times with these animals we bought a bottle of wine, and we've had the wine and we've processed the whole deer, and we're like, get done with the night. We're like, that was really fun. Like we actually we connected. Like we used the opportunity to connect, and it was just it topped off the whole process even more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you brought up your wife, because my wife gets mad at me when I give away my jerky.
Not the jerky.
She's like, don't give away the jerky, that's mine.
Exactly.
Because that's kind of a fun part of it too. I give away stuff, and especially the landowner that lets me hunt close to here.
Yeah.
I always make sure he gets summer sausage, because it's just like it's this little thing I can do to say thank you, because he doesn't ask for anything, and we've offered to do like, can we go pull fences for you, fix it? Can we do something? He's like, oh no, it's fine, so.
Yep. We have a little spot out west like that too. It's not a very big spot, but guy lets us archery hunt, and every year I tell him, or if I see some fence down, I'm like, hey, I saw some, fence down right here. I'm like, do you want me to take a hammer and tacks up there and fix it? He's like, and he gets to it before I even ever have a chance to do it. But he's just like happy to. Yeah. But we always send him a card and a gift card, like even if it's just a gas card every Christmas or something, just. Even if it's just a little bit, to let them know. Yeah. Like, just gotta let them know you're thinking of them. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, you mentioned the processing part. So you get your buck down.
So now, if you will, the rest of the story.
Yeah, so let's get to the rest of the story. Let's close the story out.
So, as I had mentioned, I was kind of in a dip, and I had that decision to make. Decided to go check this draw, and like I said, found the same group that I've been watching the whole time, and as my wife put it, she's like, oh, you found the group you had a connection with. Yeah,
that wouldn't leave you alone.
So I was like, okay, yeah, that's and rewind a little bit, when that smaller buck that I had been seeing all week for the past couple days was literally like 80 yards down the hill.
Okay. Yep.
It crossed my mind. I'm like, this is a chip shot. I can do this. And I went back and forth as I'm sitting there with my binoculars and my spotting scope, waiting for this other deer to come out, or hopefully this other deer come out. And I'm like, God, what should I do? Shouldn't I? And it just like kidding. And the darkness thing didn't come into play then, but looking back, I'm glad I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And finally, they just kind of left with my arguing with myself, if you will. And I'm like, okay, moving forward, if there's a solid opportunity, this is it. Like, this is the deer that I'm going to go after. And so I go up this rise back to where I was, and there they are again. And he is a scrappy little thing. I tell you what, he is chasing this doe, and he's scraping on trees and brush. Nice. And it's crazy. The tips of one side are broken off on his antlers, and he's a scrappy little thing. So I'm like, you know what? This is it. So I had a perfect opportunity, because down this draw there was a small hill that would have separated the view from where they were bedded in like some sage. Okay. And he was chasing the doe, this whole group. And I could easily go back the way I came and come down this draw and be completely hidden. So I'm like, this is it. We're going to do this, because it's literally 100 yards from this hill to where they're bedded. Okay. So I watched them for a little bit. They seemed to calm down. They laid down. Grab my stuff, head back a little ways, get in this draw, and head down through the draw and get to the hill. So I get about partway from the hill, set down my backpack, kind of crouch down a little bit and get a little bit further and just peek, because I knew there was some fawns in the sage, and I was like, well, if they're still there, the other ones are probably still there. So I kind of peek. Sure enough, they're still there. Scooch a little bit further, and just then, and it was hot out there, actually, to be honest. The day that I shot the deer, it was, I think, in the 50s for a high. The next day was supposed to be in the 60s. So I guess hot is relative. It's
Yeah,
November.
for November, it's very warm. Yeah.
So not remembering that sunlight and heat can really mess with the wind. The wind swirled.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, it was like an explosion of deer.
Oh, so they caught you. You had to swirl your scent.
And I'm like, no, because I felt the wind shift. It was like, and all of a sudden, the 2 fawns and one of the does come busting out of the sage towards me, basically, up into this draw area. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't see the other one, so I flop on my belly, and I'm kind of, if you think of it as on a hill, as at a weird angle.
Okay, so you're laying down.
So I'm like, I don't have a choice, so I flop down. And sure enough, here comes the doe that this little buck had been chasing through the draw. Heads up on the hill, and this buck's hot on her tail. Probably not even aware of what's going on, just like, they're leaving.
Just following his nose. Yep.
So he gets in the opening, and because of that weird angle, I didn't have my my bipod.
Yep.
Lost my.
Yep.
They extended. So I had to kind of like freehand it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of a little jumpy, because everything went so fast. But the cool thing was the wind shifted again, and they literally stopped and just stared at me. I'm like, all right, well.
Yeah, perfect.
And finally this buck moves in a spot, and I take a shot and completely miss.
Really? Nice. Yes, I love it.
Of course, we're in this draw, and it's just this giant echo.
Yes.
And there's an explosion of deer, and they go running up the hill, but one doe stands there and just stares at me like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And the other one, this little buck, go up the hill, and so I'm watching real careful. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I missed, but if I wounded him, I really want to pay attention, so I'm watching. And they get on this really steep part, and I don't know if that's why they stopped or if it was the wind or what, but they stopped. And I'm sitting there like, this could be interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
So I sit there, and they're literally watching me as I sit there, and they start coming back down the hill. I'm like, all right. So I flop down again. This time I extend my bipod, but again, the angle's too big. So
okay, so you can't get high enough.
I felt like I got a pretty decent anchor on my elbow. Okay. Which, if you remember, I left my backpack a ways off. I'll never do that again because I could have set that.
But you're learning. You're learning.
Yes.
Exactly. And you don't learn without the experience.
Yeah. So get a pretty decent anchor this time with my elbow and really settle into it this time. And he works into it and shoot and hit him. And it wasn't a solid hit because he kind of slowly walked away, but he looped around again. It came back, and so I line up again and shot again, and he curled up and fell down the hill.
Nice.
It was game over.
Yes.
So I'm like, all right. So I kind of sit, let things settle down.
Were you pretty pumped?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Of course, there's a lot of cheering to myself going on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's awesome.
So get over there and kind of get him moved to a good flat spot, and as I'm kind of moving him around, realize, oh man, this is pretty far back on his chest. I'm like, this could be interesting. So I start my what I was planning on a very methodical field dressing process.
Sure.
Quickly changed.
Yep.
So I got to the part where I had kind of his hips opened up.
Okay.
And that's kind of the way I was approaching it. And I went to go open up the abdominal cavity. And as soon as I got to the bottom of the ribs, there wasn't that kind of, how you can kind of get underneath the skin and there's still that membrane.
Yep.
As soon as I opened up that area where there'd normally be a membrane, there's a rush of air, and I could see like his diaphragm was ruptured. I'm like, oh,
okay,
this is interesting.
This is gonna smell great.
So actually, it smelled like sage the whole time. It wasn't too bad.
Wasn't too bad.
No,
good.
No. So. So, that's just kind of the unfortunate part. Sometimes things don't go like planned. And so I had to kind of work. I changed gears, and I really had to work a little, in my mind, work a little bit faster because, of course, there's a lot of abdominal fluids, and and unfortunately, I'd already opened up the hips, so there's some meat exposed, so I'm kind of rushing to get things done. Really, honestly, got, in my mind, for having not done it very much, and really, honestly, a first true field dress, I felt like I got it done pretty fast.
Nice.
It was a hack job, and there's a lot of hair that I picked up.
You can wash that out later.
But I felt like I did a pretty decent job getting it taken care of. You know, I had plenty of water still because it was early in the day. I managed to rinse some of it off. I did end up losing some meat just because I felt like I don't want to risk the bacteria and stuff, you know. But got it broke down and got it bagged up. I had, you know, game bags.
Awesome.
And so my plan was, so I was about, I think when I figured it out, I was probably about 2 miles from my truck.
Okay.
So the things I kind of walked away with were that, like I said, you know, like kind of being aware of your pack and like I said, I'm not throwing in, you know, like, you know, expensive, cheap, whatever. Just be aware of how it, like, what it feels like and how it's best suited, like, fits in there.
Yeah, fits your situation.
Yeah,
right?
And then just realizing that, having that methodical approach and sticking to it, and look at your options. One method is not better than the other. I kind of learned it's, you know, the temperature was right where it'd been totally fine to just to not try and cool. You know, if you gotta rapidly cool them down, you know, there's one way, but gutless method is honestly just fine in that temperature. So
yeah, it's definitely my favorite. I don't think I've only used that method over the last, like 7 years probably. It's just but with a helping hand, it's very quick. It's very quick because I can have my brother, you know, he'll film some shots and then he'll grab a leg and I can just I can slice that meat off so fast and get it in a game bag without ever gutting the animal.
Yeah, because really when you get the most the biggest labor, if you will, is kind of that methodical process of opening everything up. When in reality, you're just actually you're taking rid of that and you're just removing things in. So it does go very fast. So. It
is. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. But dude, your first trip, man, like that, like
I know
you learned a lot.
I did.
It was fun listening to you just like go through your process.
Yeah, I totally recommend it. You know, we talked a little bit about the solo thing, and that's probably another thing I learned. I'm not a huge, I don't mind it.
Yep.
I enjoy it. It's nice alone times. But I think the smaller doses is more where I'm going to be more successful of having an enjoyable time. You know, go for a few days by myself or whatever.
Yep.
But I had planned on a whole week. I don't know if I could have really stuck it out and had a solid experience and walked away as excited of how things went. You know, so I think like finding somebody to go with or whatever, you know, that's a good thing. Even if it's somebody who doesn't really hunt, but they're willing to be involved in the process and they're willing to carry heavy things. You know,
exactly.
And shoot, like
fellowship, man.
Yeah, call me. I don't care. I'll come carry things. It's just like it doesn't matter to me. But so I think because it's just a lot of fun to hang out and that. What I realized too of other times I've had where you sit and you glass and whatever, you have that kind of back and forth and teasing each other and messing with them, saying like, "Why are you looking over there?"
The fellowship having a comrade is awesome.
So I think that's one thing I kind of learned too. That while solo is fun, maybe not for me, but other people it maybe. I don't know. You know, so it's just it was a good experience overall. And it's exciting to have gotten it under my belt, so to speak.
Dude, I agree, man. Like I've learned about myself. I like a hunting partner. You know, a guy that I know that is good.
Yeah.
And I love spending time with. I've done solo hunts and I've been out and I enjoy them kind of like you in smaller doses. I did 10, 12 days in the backcountry alone this year, and like capable, can do it, but the enjoyment of the overall hunt wasn't as rich for me as like having my brother there, you know. So it's just, but the growth factor though was exponential. So I do think it's important to go through it, like what you said. Like the enjoyment maybe wasn't as rich in that week, but the growth factor was exponential because you were alone. Yeah,
I think I had a friend of mine. I talked to him. He actually got to do the mountain goat hunt in the Grand Tetons that they're doing.
Yep.
And I talked to him about it after, which he has the craziest story. It's like the craziest story you've ever heard. So, but anyway, so
listen to it.
so the thing he walked away from though, and he was with people, but it was a very intense experience because number one, this is something. I mean, you you don't just get to go hunt things in national parks. So
No.
like the scrutiny they were under, first of all, was huge.
Right.
Second, this country was rough.
Oh, it's nasty.
Like
They
said they spent an entire day where they didn't actually touch the ground. They were just on boulders and down trees all day.
It's crazy.
So, but what he walked away from was realizing how important time at home and time with his kids who are growing are, you know, like of striking that balance. He said, like, that's the biggest thing I walked away with, you know, is that I can be a better person at home, and that really gave him an opportunity to grab a hold of that, because he just kind of was thrust into this experience where your mind just is swirling with all these thoughts and,
yes,
you know.
Yep, and that's why I encourage guys to go out and spend this time alone and get alone in your thoughts, because it does propel you into being a better dad, a better man. So it's key, dude. I'm pumped you came on the show today.
Yeah, I'm excited.
You should be. I can't wait to hear about more of your growth in the big game hunting. It's always fun year to year hearing you grow a little bit more.
Well, this Saturday, so.
Yep, I'm back on the Saturday.
Back at it the Saturday.
Yeah, man, I'm sure I'll be getting some texts from you. So.
This is a little bit different, though. I can, it takes me 20 minutes, and I can literally drive next to it. So
Yes.
where I'm going to be. So
not quite as rigorous of a hunt.
No, a little more of a farm field, if you will, of a hunt. So.
Yep. Totally get it. Totally get it. Thanks for jumping on the show, everybody. We really appreciate it. Today does kick off our Black Friday sales. We are November 20th. So 1 week to Black Friday. We're doing a week of Black Friday on the Seeker supplements. So make sure to jump on over there to run2gun.com/shop. It's buy two, get one free on the Seekers, buy two, get one free on the Live Beyond Average multivitamins, and then you buy a protein, you get one of our free Nalgene bottles. So take advantage of that, share it with your friends. We'll talk to you later.